Hello everyone. If you like what I'm doing here, please consider subscribing, liking, and commenting. It would really help the channel out quite a bit. Thank you very much. Hello Graveyard Talkers, and welcome to another episode of Graveyard Talking. I'm your host Randy. Today we are standing behind the headstone of Silas Lewis. Now, Silas Lewis didn't make much of a history for the United States, but he did a lot here for the Michigan area. So, thought we'd see if we couldn't do a spirit session with Silas. Now, Silas, around 1806, along with his family and 5 other families here in the Monroe area. I'm going to try to put up a little bit of a video of the area as it looks today where they lived. They were being basically harassed by some Indians. I'm going to put on my glasses and I'm going to read this about Silas, because in 1812 Silas became a scout for the U.S. government, and he was a scout under General William Hall, commander of the Michigan forces. And as you know, if you remember your history, in 1812 the British decided to make American British again, and they were taking all the land that they could, and all the American citizens. They had got the Indians behind them, and they were killing a lot of the citizens, especially in this area here. So in 1812, we're going to go back about 6 years before that, but in 1812 Silas was working with a scout for William Hall, General William Hall. And William Hall was the commander of the Detroit fort, the Detroit garrison, which fell to the British. And he was the one, Silas was the one, who brought that information back 35 miles south to Monroe, Michigan here, to General Winchester, and let General Winchester know that the British has now retaking Detroit. So the Lewis family here, I believe Lucy is his wife. I'm not quite sure about his children on here. I see Lucy and him were born in, well, it's 1796, 1799 for Lucy. 1823, that would have been 24-year-old Samuel, Mary, Claire. So maybe all these were his children. I don't know. Nothing that I could find gave me any indication of which was his children and what was his wife. So I'm just assuming, and you know what assuming does, but I'm just assuming that, is that Lydia? Is that her name? Lydia was his wife, and the rest were probably children. And then I do know that we go on beyond when Silas passed away in 1853. We have 1852 as Claire, could be his daughter. Then we got 54, 55, and 57. Obviously 54, 55, 57, they're not Silas's children. Not unless he come back from the grave as a spirit and had children. And Lydia would have been a little bit on the old side. Alrighty, so the Lewis family came to the Michigan area in 1906. They were from Wales. That's where my family's from. But they first arrived in Connecticut. And so they made their home on what was called the Ives property, which is now the Hall of Divine Child. And I did a little drive through it. Didn't want to take too much pictures. I believe that has something to do with the nuns over there. There used to be a big religious area over there. A lot of churches, and so I really didn't want to intrude on anybody. The video that you see is my dash cam video. So, so previous to the War of 1812, Silas and his family lived in that particular area, and they were taken prisoners by Indians, Silas's family and 5 other families. Um, Sometime through one of the nights, they were able to escape through a tunnel, and they went to the banks of the River Raisin, and that's the river that you're going to see on the right-hand side as I'm driving down the road. And they made their way all the way to Lake Erie, which was probably 6 miles, 5, 6 miles. I remember in this time, it wasn't like you're seeing in the video from the dash cam. This is woods. This is heavy, thick woods at the time. Michigan has some pretty thick forests. In the summertime, we have high heat. We also have high humidity. So the forests grow like crazy up here. But they made it out, but it wasn't summertime like it is now. It was wintertime. And they made it all the way down from the lakes of shore, from the shores of Lake Erie. They made it all the way down to Ohio. Now, some of them had no clothes, no shoes, and the kids were carried on the backs of their fathers. Some didn't make it. The weak didn't make it. They died on the way there. And not everybody came back. Some people came back. Silas came back with his family about 5 years later. So that had been about 2000 or 2000. Yeah, whoo. Came back about 5 years later. That would have been about 1811, somewhere in that neighborhood. And he was a keeper, and he was a scout. And then after the War of 1812, he was the keeper of the county farm on South Custard Road. Now, South Custard Road would be about a half a mile north, or south rather, of where we were driving. Now it's M50 in some areas. And he also owned a farm nearby and a tannery. Now, I'm not quite sure what a county farm is. Could it have been a place where the county put their prisoners? I don't know. But after Silas died, his son took over the family business and took care of the county farm. Doesn't say what happened to his son or how long his son took care of it. So I thought what we would do is we would try to do a session here back in my old stomping grounds here in Monroe, and thought we'd do a session with Silas and see if Silas was around. So Silas Lewis, if you are around, my name is Randy. I have two devices here. I have a cell phone, and I'm going to step over into the shade here. I have a cell phone and I have a speaker. I know you don't know what those are, but they will not harm you. What they do is they allow me to talk to you. So if you would, I would appreciate if we talked to you, and of course any other spirits that are in here, if you would like to talk to us as well. I've been here a few times. I did a session just about 50 feet from here not that long ago. So Silas Lewis, are you here with us today?
I was
All right. Not quite sure what I heard in the beginning. We'll have to listen to that. Of course, as you know, I listen to everything. I don't hear everything. I don't think the spirits want me to hear everything. I think sometimes they put stuff down below or out of frequencies that I can hear with my ear. And I think they like to surprise me. And as I always say, it's not what I have to say, it's what they have to say. And that's why I go over the videos and I listen. So Silas, we understand that you and your family were held prisoners by the Indians of the area here in Monroe back around 1806. Is that correct? Alrighty, and I had heard yep in the beginning. I also heard chicken. Now, as we know, chicken refers to Michael. Michael, are you done being mad at me? Are you back? Okay, so Michael's a jokester. For those of you that don't know, Michael, I believe, is my guardian spirit that guides me through some of the places I'm at. He likes chicken. He used to go to this adult place for chicken wings. Yeah, sure, right, Mike. And I do plan on getting back over to his burial site, not too distant in the future. And he always comes in and he always lets me know he's here by saying chicken. He doesn't often interfere with me, but he's always there to help me if we need it. So Silas, let's get back to the Indians. I thought I heard you say yep. I also thought I heard you say something about shot. Were you injured or was somebody shot during the attack when the Indians took you prisoner? So the Indians in this area were generally peaceful, but they were aligned with the British. Am I correct on that, Silas? So they kept you prisoner. How long were you prisoner, Silas? How long did the Indians keep you prisoner before you and the other families were able to escape? All right, I heard Grandma in there. And those of you who've been following me know that Grandma, I believe, is my grandmother, which one of these days I'll get up and see her. Silas, was Samuel your son who took over the tannery and the farm, the county farm? So reading the headstone here, Samuel was born in 1823 and then got Mary Claire Susan, but George wasn't born to 1855, which would have been after Silas passed away. So that would tell me that your son has to be Samuel. So Silas, what would you like to tell me about the night, the day, the attack on the Indians, by the Indians on you and your family? What would you like to tell me? So I heard you asked, and then another spirits came in there. You asked who, what? Who did you ask and what did you ask them? You tried to help them. What did you do to try to help them? So the report is that they were getting drunk on your property and they were fighting with each other, and that's what led you to be able to escape? I heard bourbon in there. Did they have bourbon back then? Did they have bourbon back there in 1806? I don't know about bourbon in 1806, but we'll find out. So you made it out of the house, out of your property, and then you headed over to um, the river. So this was wintertime. Can you tell me the month? Can you tell me the month that this happened? We know it was 1806. Can you tell me the month this happened? All right, I heard lake in there. So what we do know is they went to the river and they followed the banks of the river to Lake Erie. Now that had to be a pretty good track. Now you would not have gone through too much force if you were on the river if it was frozen. Now the river raisin does freeze, and if it was anything, I suspect the dams were not there then. I believe these were put in the mid 1850s. There's 2 or 3 dams that are there, just small little dams. But I'm assuming it probably was still pretty treacherous walking the lake frozen, was it not? It was some hell living. What month? Let's try here again, Silas. What month did you escape from the Indians? I heard the 7th or the 11th, and then I heard the date. As of somebody saying, I didn't need the date. We want the month. We want the month, not the day. What month was it? Okay, I heard November in there. I don't know what the month was. I heard November. There's no record of what that month was in the information that I've seen. I will see if I can't find some more information on it while I'm editing this. But somebody said November. Now here, this time, November, it gets cold, but it don't freeze. Maybe back then it did. I don't know. So Silas, when you got to the lake, now the lake does not freeze. How did you make your way from Monroe down to Ohio? I heard struggling. Yeah, I imagine it was a struggle. It's not a very, even today, it's not a very hospitable way to go. Walking from here to Toledo along the lake is difficult. There's a lot of inlets, a lot of swamps, and I imagine back in those days there's probably a whole lot more. So you stayed in Ohio. How long were you in Ohio before you came back up? Some say about 5 years. The reports I read say about 5 years. I heard what sounded like 5 years. And then how did you get back up here? Obviously you didn't come that way. 2011, the British were here, had taken over this area for some time. It had fallen back into British hands. And how did you make it back from Ohio back up here to Monroe, Michigan?
So can only so that the 30
And I may have misspoke there. I don't think this area fell to the British, but I know there were British here. We know that the British here were aligned with the Indians in the area, which were, for the most part, generally peaceful. Did you have help getting from Ohio up here, or did you just do it on your own? Did you bring your family back up here? Sound like I heard he came up by the lake. Now, they did have steamers and they did have ships, sailboats in those days. So, did you come by boat? Sound like I heard canoe. Sound like it said canoe. Waves are pretty big. I guess you could come up by canoe. There's no north and south river here that I know of. There's a Raisin River, goes east and west, but I don't know of any river, and I would not want to take a canoe on Lake Erie.
something just
Some things you just have to do, I guess. So you aligned yourself with the Army here in Michigan? And then we know you went to Detroit and worked in Detroit with the other general. And then you were there when Detroit fell. Something about Monroe. I heard him say something, Monroe. So how long did it take you to get from Detroit to Monroe? It's around 35 miles. We know there was a pike at the time, which is now US 24. How long did it take you to get back to Monroe to notify the general in Monroe that Detroit had fallen?
So we know
Right, you had to come back to report to the general. How long did it take you to make your report? Now let me ask you, because I don't know, what was the purpose of the county farm? Was it a prisoner farm?
Don't cool with
So the historical document that I read said that you had a farm, you were in charge of the county farm, and you ran a tannery. Alrighty, well at this point I'll do like I always do. I'm going to let it run. We're running a little bit late here, so I'm going to let this run for about a minute. Silas, if there's anything or any other spirits in the cemetery that would like to say something, I'll give you about a minute to say what you have to say. So please go ahead and speak now.
Okay. Some about something walls.
My story.
I mean,
Story.
normal. These
Alrighty, I didn't hear much on that. So as always, I'd like to thank the spirits who did come out and talk. Silas, I'd like to thank you, not only for coming out and talking to us today, but for your 1812 coming and being a scout for the U.S. and coming and telling the general here in Monroe that Detroit had been taken by the British.
can only
Alrighty, well that's it for today. We'll have to listen to what Silas had to say. I think he confirmed some stuff. He went down to Ohio along the lake. I don't know if they called it Lake Erie back in those days, but and he came back. He came back by a canoe, and I guess maybe he felt so freedom was so inbred in him that he was willing to take up arms and basically fight against his former homeland of Great Britain at the time, because I believe at that time Wales was, as it is now, part of the United Kingdom. So with that, I want to thank everybody for joining me on this warm July day, and I will see you all on the next one.